Hey folks, I'm finally back at it with this story. I haven't read any since last year. We left off on chapter 6, so this is chapter 7. It was a challenge for me not to be able to express my disappointment in front of those that could arrest me for 5 years for possessing it, that I had unnecessarily discarded my cannabis. The focus was on our stalkers, and we all wanted to keep it so. The police flashed them to pull over. We did too, wanting to discover the outcome. Before the stalkers could say anything, the officers shoved a breathalyzer each into their mouths. They read 34.5 each, and 'twas concluded that the couple would be locked up in 2 different prisons. But the police didn't know what the procedure was to get the criminals to pay us for the damage to the Range Rover to be fixed. They made up for it by offering us some popcorn fickin and a non-dry 5-bean chili with rice, a staple meal of Terry, from a stove they casually had in their boot. 'Twas actually grand, but we were so clucking hungry that it wouldn't have mattered if it was rubbish. Eve had some too, and was basically as ravenous as the rest of us at this point because she was on quetiapine. "I am so sorry that we don't have any tortilla chips to go with this," one of the officers said, but the 5 of us had already eaten our portions up without that crispy corn crossing our mind. "No bother, that was worth being shunted into the back of for," Peter pointed out, utterly orgasmic. The officers nodded in unison and collected our plastic plates. At the time, we were too relieved to no longer be starving to question why they didn't eat any of the food themselves. As mentioned at the end of the previous chapter, there was something I was very much not relieved about, and I was yet to break it to the others. But then it occurred to me that I dropped it, rather than handing it to the couple. They might not have picked it up. "Guys, I've left something on the beach. I'll be right back." "No probs," Eve said. Sure enough, the weed was still bagged up, and I scooped it just before the waves washed it into the sea with the unpalatable corpse. "What have you left behind, Tyler?" my brother wanted to know. My grey matter sizzled for some seconds, trying to think of an alternative to "We almost lost our essential drug for this trip." I managed to come up with my prostate massager. I'm just going to change trip to capitals, block caps, because it's a trip and a trip. Damn, I thought we had only brought the essentials. Flint and steel plus drugs. If I'd known, I would have brought my butt plug. But let's have a spliff. It has been torturous holding back for the coppers. The rest of us, apart from Peter and Eve, who wanted to suck polos instead, agreed at the same time. After 69 minutes, smoking sat on some flower clumps at the side of the road. We all said it smelt like shit. Then we felt our asses and literally got a right hot handful of it. We had all shat ourselves. Must have been too stoned and sugared up to realise at the soiling moment. "That rice was definitely dodgy," stated Ben, before his cheeks puffed up like those of chipmunks with chunder that chortled onto a hot pink Mini Cooper, its exhaust pipe a bomb of the driver's effing and blinding. "I wonder how many days it had been out of the fridge," I added, more shit squirting from the bottoms of my trousers like my arse was a ruptured artery. We downed the rest of Eve and Peter's supply of ginger tablets to no avail. In fact, they made our sickness worse. We couldn't even get a signal to look things up to reduce the effect of food poisoning. I phoned the Food Standards Agency and explained the situation, then asked them what to do. They vowed to report the officers for us, who I remembered from their name badges that I'd seen were called Bacillus and Serious. The person on the phone advised us that we stay hydrated, but we didn't have any drinks with us. 5 minutes later, we were back down by the sea. I was about to suggest that we try to get the salt out of the water when Ben was already ushering the foamy wave residue down his throat. "Much better than sex on the beach at Spoons," he exclaimed. Luckily, the turding and chucking up had stopped for the moment and was just trumps and burps on top of telling Ben to stop drinking seawater. Peter was pointing back to the car park, making us aware that the cafe was open for another 5 minutes. Before Peter poked his head through the door, the rest of us getting out as much gas as possible before we hopefully were able to enter, a server said that they were already closed. A second later, there was a puddle of Peter's puke on the floor that gave us those 5 minutes back because they had to search for their cleaning products. "You poor Belle, and there's a turd coming out of your end," alerted the person at the counter. We were given a litre of bottled water each for free, and Mr. Burrow finally took off his belle cloche. Ironically, for a bell, it turned out 'twas soundproof. For a few minutes before the cafe staff put on some heavy metal, all we could hear was the gurgling of his insides. Our drum and bass brains made staying there not an option. As Peter, Eve, and the manager got undressed, the rest of us left. Stay tuned for Chapter 8.